For many people, 2013's The Last of Us video game is one of their favourites of all time, and now, 10 years later, we have a HBO series with Pedro Pascal as Joel and Bella Ramsey as Ellie. And I mention that casting straight away because that's been one of the hot topics surrounding the show in its build-up, and even if you go back years ago, people were fan casting these characters with Hugh Jackman's name being thrown around, as well as Caitlin Dever, for example. And as first impressions go, I'm generally pleased. I think Pedro Pascal as Joel, he has that acting ability and that range to take on a character like this, and we've already seen in shows like The Mandalorian that he has that father figure approach nailed down, so he can definitely bring that over to this show as well. In regards to Bella Ramsey, we didn't get to see as much of her as we did with Pedro, but she's already shown that attitude and that fierce nature of Ellie, and I think with her and Pedro, they seem to have that chemistry which will be obviously vital for a show like this. And yes, these actors may not look exactly like their video game counterparts, but we've seen with things like the Halo series where you can get something very accurate to the video game and be pretty bad still. So the main thing here is that we get that relationship of Joel and Ellie coming from the screen more than it is that they look exactly like they do in the video game, because at the end of the day, it's an adaptation. The series does start differently from the video game, as it opens up with a 1960s talk show where they're discussing the threats of a pandemic, viruses, and the effect it can have on the human body. And with that, I think that did a good job of setting the mood for the show, while at the same time also helping those who are unaware of The Last of Us and the story to know what they're getting into here. As is the case with many HBO programs, we do have a good intro here. I believe it was made by the same people who did the Game of Thrones intro, and I think that's quite clear to see with the way it pans around on screen. It's very much in that same style. They did use the music from the video game in this as well, which I thought was a great choice, because when you have that sort of soundtrack at your disposal, you might as well use it. For the most part of episode 1, we do follow Joel's daughter Sarah, who's played by Nico Parker, who you may recognise as she is the daughter of Tandy Newton. With any post-apocalyptic story, I always do enjoy seeing that calm before the storm, and here we see Sarah, going to school, going to fix Joel's watch for his birthday, so we see all those everyday life situations. And one of the most memorable scenes from this first episode was the scene where Sarah is in that lady's house and we see the old lady in the background, but she's blurred and she's out of focus, but you can still see something happening with her, and that makes it extra creepy because also our main character is not actually knowing what's happening. It did remind me quite a bit actually of in Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows Part 1 when they're in the Godric's Hollow and we see Nagini come to full form in the background there as well. Of course, with a TV series based off a video game, there's going to be plenty of Easter eggs. I'm sure there's videos and articles out there which will list every single one for you, but one which really did stick out for me was when the chaos was unfolding and we're in the back seat of the car, just like in the video game, where it was looking at Sarah's point of view in that back seat, and it just works so well because, everything's out of control. We're not in control of the car. We're in the back seat. We're looking on through the different windows, trying to see where the danger's coming from next, sort of thing. So I just think that they did a spot on job there of getting that feeling again right from the video game into the show. Also, I must add, we did see a ladder in this episode, the famous ladders of The Last of Us. So maybe next week we'll see a brick or a bottle. We'll have to wait and see. Now, due to the similarities of the shows, I've seen many people compare this first episode of The Last of Us to the first episode of The Walking Dead, and a few have said that they think The Last of Us do a much better job in that sense. But I'd say with The Walking Dead, it's a lot different. With The Last of Us, we do see everything crash and burn, whereas with The Walking Dead, we have a character wake up to that aftermath, and we're having to piece things together and actually imagine how it all went down. And I think in that sense, they both actually work very well. And with both episodes, we do have a range of emotions, but I gotta say The Last of Us does definitely win in terms of having the saddest moment when we see Sarah get shot and killed, and we see Joel cradle the body of his dead daughter. With the way the game and show was marketed, you know that the story is going to be about Joel and Ellie, so when you see that Joel has a daughter right at the start of the story, you immediately think that she's probably going to die. But even with that in mind, and especially if you already played the game and you've seen it happen, it still was shocking. So I think that's a credit to the show that they could still get those feelings out of you. When we jump forward 20 years to 2023, and we see Joel just dump those bodies into the fire, not really showing any emotion, it really just shows how broken this man has become. As the show goes on, we're introduced to Tess, and Joel and Tess eventually meet up with Marlene and take Ellie with them as part of the deal. And they have changed a few details though, because in the game they were going to get guns, whereas now it's a car battery. And there's certain things as well throughout the whole show actually where they just change a few things here and there. Of course, spores is a big thing, which has been in the news, that they've changed that. But I think with certain things it will work fine, and maybe others potentially not as well as in the game, but wait and see. Obviously we've got 9 episodes to watch of this show, so it'll be interesting to see if it does come to a good result. There are certain parts of the story here which could have used a little bit more time, maybe a few extra lines of dialogue, just to help those who are, especially who are new to the series, understand exactly what is going on. And one of the final scenes where we see Joel's rage overflow and take down that guard, I thought that was expertly done, especially when we get to see Ellie's reaction or lack of reaction to it. And in the final shot, we see the 3 of them walk towards the destroyed building, and we can hear one of the clickers, and if you zoom in to one of the rooftops, you can actually see it as well. And that worked as a great start and tease of what's coming up for the series. Towards the start of episode 2, I do expect them to go into a bit more depth in terms of Ellie's immunity, because they did rush through that reveal quite quickly, so I think maybe a conversation about that might be how we start off the next episode. Overall, I thought the production design was really good, and with HBO they usually do a fine job when it comes to really ramping up that scale, and I think for a story like this, that's great to see. They've done fantastically well to get that feel of the game into the show, and I think so far it's a promising and solid start where I'm excited to see more. So what did you think of episode 1? And also let me know down in the comments below, have you played the games or are you watching this show as a fresh viewer? And on the subject of the games, we're currently doing our first playthrough of The Last of Us Part 2 on Twitch every Tuesday night UK time, so feel free to drop in at some point, link is in the description. But if you want to watch something right now, on screen is our review for Avatar: The Way of Water.